starting with Dr. Hughes. So Dr. Hughes is, and I thank, you'll meet the speakers, but Henry Allen really helped me assemble this cast, this powerful cast that we have today. And he introduced me to Dr. Hughes, who is a professor of strategy at the Kellogg School of Management and professor of preventive medicine at the Feinberg School of Medicine. Dr. Hughes has recently been elected the chair of the Faculty Senate here at Northwestern. He has done a lot at Northwestern for more than 20 years, and he has also been the initiator of the combined MBA MD program, and which is something he's very proud of. So I'm going to let him start. He's going to be really our key speaker, set the tone, and then we'll have the others come after that. Dr. Hughes?
Terrific. Thank you, Dr. Hussain. It's excuse me, a pleasure to be with you all this morning. Otherwise, I'd be resting at home in Evanston. So that's a joke. I'm trying to lighten it up. But anyway, Joe's got this tie on right here. What are you wearing a tie for? I mean, it's Saturday morning. You know, come on, relax. And but it really is my pleasure. And as Dr. Hussain,
I apologize. Your battery.
my battery's running. My wife says that all the time.
Yeah. So I didn't mean to interrupt. But I think it's best that we just take care of this battery system.
Terrific. Can you hear me now, as they say? Terrific. Well, excuse me, it's really a pleasure. And I take particular pleasure in this experience in the sense that the great majority of you are physicians. And I'm a physician, and I'm a believer in physicians. I think I'm a member of the AMA, as Henry so capably represents. But I think that if there ever a time in American medicine where physician leadership were important, this is it. The day that it was less important than this was yesterday, and the day before that only a bit less important. Every single day it's important. And I think that it has been mentioned I started the MD MBA program. I started that in 1986 because I wanted physicians to have the same knowledge base, particularly the language, the concepts, and the tactics, as it were, of non-physician managers to be able to compete in a professional and successful manner. Physicians have a body of knowledge that is not shared by non-physician executives, and it's critically important that that knowledge base be infused into health policy making and institutional policy making. So Dr. Hussain was incredibly gracious to say that I've been at Northwestern for more than 20 years. In fact, in September will mark my 40th anniversary of being a professor at Northwestern. By the way, my early students now are Medicare eligible, if you can believe that. But it's fascinating to observe how we have changed and grown, et cetera, particularly our healthcare system over that period of time. I taught from 1985 until just last year the health policy class for the entire university that drew not only the MBA candidates, but students from medical school, from the College of Engineering, all across the university, molecular biologists, et cetera. It's a fascinating class, including members of the faculty of medical school. And so I've kind of lived through this whole thing. And so what I want to do is to give you a little bit of a perspective this morning into which the issue of mergers, acquisitions, consolidation, et cetera, would fit. And Henry is going to most ably particularly talk on that topic, and I'm going to try to provide for you an umbrella overall in which the comments would fit. Really, what's going on in healthcare today? Why is it happening? What does it mean? And what does the future hold? But before I begin, I always like to get to know my audience. So I'd like to ask, is Anand Kumar here? VP of Communications. That's an incredibly impressive title. If you're from Johns Hopkins, no less. Wonderful. Great institution. What would you like to get out of my comments?
I'd like to know a lot about sort of what the consequences of all these healthcare mergers are going to be, particularly in our local area. We have the Hopkins Medical Group, Kaiser Permanente, all these other large groups competing, and everyone has a sense of overwhelming anxiety. I think because of ignorance and uncertainty. And I'm hoping to have a little better handle on understanding what's going to happen.
Okay. Joe. The man with it looks like that's a Vineyard Vines tie. Is that what that is?
Joe's never won
Yeah. So, what would you like to get out of my comments? Oh, okay. Joe, you're on. Think of this great moment in sports.
There we
right?
go.
Yeah.
So I'm from the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center, so UPMC, and so there we are a little different maybe than a lot of the country, and or
Speak
we,
into your thing a little closer.
we tend to believe that we're doing we're on the forefront of I think where surgeons may be incentivized not to operate and value over volume. So and so we're infused with that all the time. So we have a very myopic view of medicine. So I'm very interested in hearing what your thoughts about things like that.
No, great medical center. It's fascinating. You guys are advertising in the Wall Street Journal full-page ads for a long time. They've not been recent, but very interesting. I was at Mount Sinai School of Medicine in New York prior to coming here. One of my best students went on to Pittsburgh in orthopedics. I was very proud of that and played a role in his going there. Terrific. Carolyn Rogers from Boston Children's. I've traveled widely in Avenue Louis Pasteur, so not only for medical school, but for high school. So, Carolyn, what would you like to get out of my comments?
Well, as a fairly junior surgeon, I'd be really interested to hear what you foresee 20 years in the future for surgeons who are starting out in academic practice, and where we're going to be 20 years, 30 years from now.
You're going to be right where you are right now. That's the appendix will still be there, so you will be in demand. That's a very good question, and I haven't really thought of that much. But I would say not all. By the way, change. There will be what I call Mac. Now, where's our these high-tech people here? By the way, I can project my voice if need be. This is not that necessarily large auditorium. Drew, is this due to the microphone or what? Well, that'll be hard to do. Why don't we just, you can hand it to me, we'll see how it works, okay, because I got to hold. My hands will be otherwise occupied. Surgeons will be performing the same, let's say, types of procedures, whatever, in the future. I think what Joe talked about.
Early, you can hold it. I will get you a mic stand, okay?
Right. Anyway, medicine, the micro medicine won't change that much, and people are still going to get sick. I think politicians forget about that. But I mean, we're doing something in medicine. It isn't just flim-flam, et cetera. GDP numbers. There's something going on there. So if I can provide, I love your word anxiety. I think from an institutional perspective, the anxiety is probably appropriate. We don't know what's going to happen. I mean, even in educational institutions, Sweetbriar College, folding and this kind of stuff. So anxiety is appropriate. But on balance, I think I'd like to be able to diminish the anxiety a little bit. Okay, we're not going to see radical change. Change happens incrementally for the most part. It'll be incremental change, and you will be able to adjust to it. That's where physician leadership comes in. You guys ought to know about this stuff. You're VP of Communications. I mean, you should be in the forefront of this. What's going on? Why? What's the driving forces? And hopefully I can help you with that. But you've got to be involved. You can't be, as physicians, you can't be back. Say, gee, what are these people doing? You got to be one of those people. You got to be there. Okay. Now, with that, Jack Yu, AMS historian. I'm impressed. Leisurely sitting against the wall in a very casual manner, as opposed to Joe with his tie up here. What would you like to get out of my comments?
Well, Chicago leads the country.
No question.
Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know why we're doing this. You guys have already moved forward. I want to see what kind of minds they are, what we need to watch out so that we don't repeat the same problem. I particularly want to know what it is that the society as a whole is trying to get out of this, other than the fact that business people are trying to make it.
Well, I've never known plastic surgeons not to be interested in making money. I mean, you're right about business people making money, but that's kind of the way the world is. So, by the way, it's very important also. That's why the MD, MBA, to understand business. I mean, Ron took one of my classes at Northwestern, and I would always ask a student, why do business schools exist? And they would say, oh, to make, what do you want? You want this? my opponent for the morning. I didn't realize. So.
I'm not your opponent. I'm your teammate. Okay?
Teammate, okay,
All right,
okay,
all right.
good.
I'm just trying to make this work. Okay.
Good, great. Now, but it's very important to understand what business is all about. But now I asked, why does a business school exist? And remember, the students will say, oh, to make money. Well, they don't. They exist to improve society. If you understand the driving intellectual paradigm of business schools is consumer sovereignty. What do people want? And our job is to craft the products that will meet their unmet needs. That's what marketing is all about. Marketing research is not, marketing is not advertising. Marketing is as rigorous as biophysics or whatever. Marketing research.
Free marketing exists in market medicine today?
Of course not. And that's a major problem. That's a major problem. In fact, we've got monopsony power of the federal government regarding Medicare is atrocious. I think physicians should be able to opt out of Medicare on an individual basis. If I have a legal problem, I can find out the best best lawyer in the city of Chicago, and I'll say, look, I want to buy an hour of your time. I don't care if it's $10,000, I'll pay for it, okay? But the best plastic surgeon in the country under Medicare cannot do that. Why can't I go and find the best one and pay that person what their time is worth? It's a terrible problem, okay? And I think, if you worry about what's 20 years from now, this monopsony power, what is called the Medicare, dictating prices, is the real problem. We're going to talk a little bit about that, okay? And it's Teddy Kennedy played a major role, actually, regretfully, in writing that legislation where physicians, you're either in it or you're out totally. And we need to bring about much more market forces. And the problem with it is that there's a little article today I'm going to make reference to in the Wall Street Journal saying Republicans need to bring more market forces back into healthcare. The problem is that they bring a lot of other baggage with them, what people perceive to be anti-women, anti-this, anti-that, anti-that. So I think you need some people who are free of some of that baggage coming forward with good market principles, okay, to prove the system. It's very tough. And we'll talk about that in a few minutes. That actually precedes. So there's one other individual that I wanted to ask about here from Mount Sinai Hospital. Who's from Mount Sinai here? Ah, Peter, terrific. Sitting right next to Joe. Total difference of it. You know, must be from Los Angeles. Look at no socks. Terrific. Well, what Mount Sinai are you from?
There really only is one Mount Sinai now. My question is that.
No, which one? I mean, what city? I mean, is this...
The charter is the Mount Sinai Hospital. So there's a Mount Sinai in Cleveland, there's a Mount Sinai in Florida, but our charter is the Mount Sinai Hospital.
What city are you
New York.
in? God love you. Okay, yeah. I was at East 19 East 98th Street for about 10 years. I loved it. Great institution.
Sure.
Great. That's why I called on you, for heaven's sakes. Enough of this. You know, he's a New Yorker. I bet you, are you a Yankees fan?
Absolutely.
Oh, Jesus Christ. What are you going to do? So I'm a Bostonian. I mean, Christ, you know.
Do they have a team
But
there?
yeah. In recent days, no. I mean, A-Rod getting a homer in the first inning last night. I shut the TV off. I couldn't take it anymore. With that, Peter, with your mild sense of egocentricity, could you provide a little perspective what you would like to gather from my remarks?
Well, as I said, Mount Sinai is very different from UPMC. You know, we are driven by the almighty dollar. And my question, when I lament, my anxiety is that is there a place for academic medicine anymore? You know, our medical centers is operate. We got to fill beds. We have to generate revenue. And somebody who's interested in an academic practice sort of falls by the wayside.
That's regrettable. I mean, that's quite regrettable. I mean, that's a change from when I was there. I mean, I was there from '69 to '77, and Mount Sinai was just coming into being. It was a great place to be. I loved it, and but that's regrettable. That is going on in a lot of places. On page A4 of today's Wall Street Journal is an article where the United States House of Representatives passed a bill to increase the NIH budget and to actually facilitate more rapid approval of pharmaceutical products, et cetera. So I'd like to think that academic medicine will be able to survive and prosper. However, a reason for saying that is I teach biotechnology as well as other things. The greatest age of medicine is still in front of us. I mean, this whole immunotherapy business, I mean, we're going to be knocking off diseases that people never even thought of being able to do. I just pray every single day that I live longer that another thing will be developed for whatever that disease is going to be. I think academic medicine will be here. It'll be more difficult. You're competing as the health clinical budget rises, there's then a pressure on the research budgets. Okay, so that is going to be there. But again, academic medicine has got to be involved in the process. And my critique of academic medicine over the years is it's been kind of aloof, and it's got to get into the action. Got to get into the action. But it will be. The people understand, and also our VP of Communications, you got to get the word out. These are cures we're producing. This isn't just research, this is cures, and people will see that. So with the right communication strategy from American medicine, and I tried to meet with the president of the AMA, the ENT guy before your current guy, and he canceled the meeting. I had the whole answer for the guy. So anyway, you got to get the word out. It's going to be difficult. That behavior is quite regrettable. That will continue, and there'll be a battle. And I think you got to stand, people stand up and say enough of this stuff. Okay. Now with that, this is very, very helpful as a kind of an introduction. What I want to do, and Drew, thanks for this. This seems to be working. Okay. Now, I actually once had to give a speech where I had to balance this thing on top of that. That was a very interesting experience. Now, what I want to do is give you that overview. What's going on? Well, basically, first off, a nation's health delivery system is part of the political process. There is not like politics here, then there's medicine. We are central to that political process, and it's driving American medicine more and more for political goals rather than, shall we say, health goals or the goals of the institution itself. And it's being manipulated. By the way, I have a daughter who is a house officer at Lake Clinic in medicine. She wasn't surgery, but she decided to go into medicine. But anyway, physicians will make less money. That's a problem, because we want to attract to this profession the best and the brightest. One of the saddest experiences I've had at the Kellogg School is seeing incredibly talented young men and women who are sons and daughters of physicians becoming consultants. They should be in medical school, and they're not going there. Okay, that's a problem. There's a long, long line. My daughter was one of these post-bac type of MBA. She was the U.S. Senate and decided to go into medicine. So it was years to get in it. So there's a huge, long line of kids who want to get in and can't get in. But we want to get the very best. That's a problem. That's a problem. So income will go down, and some of the really talented people who otherwise go into medicine, including research, are now going to go earth sciences, material engineering, all this kind of business. Anyway, so medicine is part of the political process, and you got to understand it and fight in that process. Nothing comes without struggle. I'm not trying to be melodramatic. Nothing comes without struggle. This is a fierce competition. One of the things I'm trying to do is basically bring about some major changes within Northwestern University as a part of the faculty senate. I'm meeting with them regularly, all my fellow people. We're going to launch a major initiative, and it's going to be a struggle. No one likes to give up power. Everybody's got their little thing. Nothing comes easy. Now, also, you can't understand a nation's health delivery system without understanding its history. Very important. Why do we have a private insurance industry versus England or Canada, which is against the law? Okay, it goes all the way back to April 19th, 1775. What happened then? Patriots Day. Come on. Lexington and Concord, all that kind of stuff, okay? It all matters. That's why we have the market forces we do. We need many more. We need many more. Okay? Now, but it's a struggle. You can't understand American healthcare without understanding American history. And also, as we move forward in history, in our health delivery system, it's a struggle among values. What are the values of the nation? One of the values being market principles, another one being monopsony power, let's force this in, et cetera, et cetera. But it's a struggle for value, among values. And the first of the value that is basically driving the system, is part of the driver, is the value of equity. And by equity, I mean fairness. Okay? How do you get the maximum amount of the most precious social services, which is medical care, to the maximum of people? If it wasn't 923, I'd expand on that. Why is it, I believe it's the maximum amount, it's the most precious of social services, even more important than education. My belief that medical care is even more important than education is a fact that it's very hard to learn if you're dead. You get that, Joe? He's joking. I can explain it. Yankee fan was slow in uptake. But anyway, very hard to learn if you're dead. It's a witticism, but it's true. It's empirically verifiable. Okay, and if you're into guideline development, it's evidence-based. And people actually, This is a very slow group. Most groups are laughing about this stuff, laughing. Anyway. Now, so anyway, even more important than education and the thrust towards equity basically focuses on expanding access to health care. This is what Obamacare is all about. Okay, the Affordable Care Act. Okay, the subject of an article in today's paper we're going to talk about in a few minutes. So this is one of the battles. Okay, and these guys, Jack, tend to be the monopsonists. Okay, all we care is we're going to bring the people in. We don't care what it costs. We're going to deal with that issue in our own particular way. Warring again. By the way, this is where the classical Democrats focused. This is where the British and the Canadian put their emphasis. It was here, expanding access to health care. But there's another value underneath the piece of paper that wars with this one. Okay, and this is the value of efficiency. This is what Jack's talking about. Okay. And it's a constant struggle. Where are we going to go within this, find the equilibrium? With Obamacare, we move way over here. Okay? The Republicans are arguing, and particularly today's new Wall Street Journal, we've got to move back here a little bit more. Okay? This is the struggle we fight. Now, within efficiency are two attributes. The first attribute is that of cost. So easily to account, notes the verb I'm using, okay? That a lot of emphasis placed on. This is what your crowd, Peter and Mount Sinai, is focused on, what cost, money, etc. It's so easy to account. But there's another attribute within efficiency that is harder to account, but through the advance of health service research over the last generation, I'm proud to play a small part in that, we now have metrics to measure this with some degree of sensitivity and specificity. We measure that one, and that's the attribute of quality. Okay? And so, again, the battle among the values plays out among the relationship among these three here. Okay. Now, again, at the risk of time, one of the critical questions is, what's the causal driver among these three? Okay. What's the causal driver? Which one of these three has caused the other ones to move? We're going to have a vote. Okay. And is it access that's caused these to move? Is it cost that's caused these two to move? Or is it changes here that have caused these to move? This is critically important. Hang on a minute now. Real enthusiasm. That's great. Now, so a vote. How many believe of these three, access is the one that has caused the other two to move? One? Okay, terrific. How many believe the cost? Wait a minute. Oh, wait, cost or still on access? Okay, so one. Okay, cost. How many believe the cost is a driver? All right, we got 4, 8, 10, 12, 15, 16, 17. Joe, that changed his vote. That's okay. That's all right. Now, how many of the quality is the driver? Okay, we got 4 of you. That's the correct answer. Okay? The product of medicine that was enfranchised under Medicare in 1965 is not the product that we're delivering now. Okay? This has radically changed over these years. It was fascinating for me when I went from Columbia. I trained in surgery, by the way, general surgery at Columbia. And had I stayed with surgery, I would have become a plastic surgeon. I'm not making this up. It was the most intellectually interesting, fascinating, and I think creative of all the specialties. Now, but there are other little thing called Medicare came along, and I said, wait a minute. I think some of us can try to fix this a little bit. So anyway, this thing, we have so radically changed the product of medicine that has caused this to rise, which caused that to fall. If we had the same product, the technical product of medicine right now as we had in 65, this would be much, much less, and there only would have been 10 or X million uninsured. Wouldn't have cost very much to do it. Okay, but this is driven, and the radicalness of and I said earlier, the change occurs incrementally. Here it has incrementally, but over those decades, it's radical. That this is the cover of Time magazine. Okay, just a few months ago, March 2nd, this baby could live to 142 years old. It's not because of brain for breakfast. Okay, it's this medicine. Okay, now therefore the critical thing is what's going on regarding this. Okay, my bias was that when Obama said that we're going to bring 39 million Americans into the health delivery system and it's not going to cost you anything. I said, what? This didn't follow the laws of economics that I understood. Okay? And then speaking to Maria Bartiromo one Friday afternoon in the fall of 2009, he says, well, we're going to be able to do that because 1/3 of Medicare spending is waste. Now, do you realize, what is your name, sir? Steve. 1/3 of what you do is waste? You think about that? You know? And I was actually advising one of the major private equity firms in Chicago recently, and they have a health advisory committee, and in there was the chairman of the Centera Health System, and was it around Virginia there, you know? And so I said, you know, I'm sure when you bring your senior executives together, Ron, you must do this at Lori here, you know, on Monday morning each week, and you say, now, what's our waste level today? Are we 32? Are we 33? We're 31? Well, we could drop it up, you know, raise it. I mean, this is crazy. Okay, this is nuts. There may be inappropriate work. Your guys wanting less surgery, right on. Okay, we're not arguing that there's not waste. There's waste in this pen. There's waste in the iPhone. We certainly know there's waste in this, you know, audio system, let alone the Dreamliner and all this kind of business. Okay, that's what business is all about. That's the continuous quality improvement drive. Okay, but to say 1/3, this is ridiculous. So my bias was that this thing was going to go off the wall with Obamacare. Now, the Congressional Budget Office projected way back when the bill was being debated that the cost of the bill would look something like this. And by the way, this represents billions of dollars. This is from the report of the Congressional Budget Office of this March, the Joint Committee on Taxation. And by the way, anyone know what the Congressional Budget Office is? What is it? Yes, you do. I have a spouse. She belongs anywhere I go, so you belong here. You raised your hand. What is it?
Well, it's the committee that makes the budget for all the
A little bit. Any other elaboration? It's actually, well, it's an office, okay, of Congress that essentially scores what legislation is going to cost. Okay, that's their goal. It's populated by economists, all well trained, some of the smartest people in the country. I mean, Henry can attest to this. And as soon as they join up with this organization, they lose all common sense. And so they predict the thing to go like this, okay? And I'm saying, look, this is going to be a real national problem. Well, in January, they came out with a revised projection. The costs weren't actually going to go like this. It was actually something like this. 11% reduced from what they had previously projected. And then this March, just 3 months after or 2 months after January, they came out with another projection that said, oh no, it's only now going to cost us this much. This is from 2015 forward to 2025. By the way, when I developed this, by the way, have you noticed the incredible multimedia extravaganza we have here? As I developed this graphic, each year was supposed to be the same space among the years. You see it gets smaller and smaller. Well, all of you know as age goes on, time flies faster. So the years are much shorter up here. But anyway, that's so funny. I don't even have a writer for this stuff. Everybody else laughs. I mean, terrible. Anyway, so they have this, 29% less than what they had previously projected. So what's going on here? Okay, what's going on? Whereas my instinctual reactions wrong, that this thing is not going to cost what you thought it was going to cost, what's going on? Well, as of today, I always read the Wall Street Journal. I try to get my students to read it. Here's today's paper. By the way, I'm from Boston. That's how you say it, okay? And here's the first editorial, the Unaffordable Care Act, saying that insurance premiums are rising between, at a minimum, 15% to 50 to 60% across the country. The legislation has in it a provision that if you're above 10%, the federal government has to review the application. 650 applications are now set for review across the country. What's amazing to me is that in Oregon, where I think the Blue Cross of Oregon and one of the otherwise reputable organizations put in for a 18% increase in their premium, the commissioner of insurance in the state, whose job is to keep costs down of insurance premiums, raised the estimate to 35%. Because if she didn't do that, the firm would have gone out of business. And there's a wonderful statement in here that says, but a business can't continue to pay more than $1 for every $1 of revenue forever. Now, we try to basically instill that in our business students. What that means is that your costs can't be greater than your revenues. You generally aren't in business too long if you're not. But that's what has been going on. Now, coming to your point, Jack, more to the point, U.S. healthcare is becoming a government-directed network of oligopolies dominated by huge politically protected incumbents. The federal government being the largest of those politically protected incumbents. And an alternative GOP agenda that promises more patient choice and control and more competition and innovation might well gain popular support, even among the voters Obamacare was supposed to help. Good luck to you. The Republicans have not done an effective job of bringing that forward. They don't have a good. Kyle Rove had a very effective editorial op-ed just in the last week saying, look, guys, let's get some ideas out there. They're not very, very effective. But this was very interesting. By the way, a little footnote, they knew I was going to speak. So they called me up. They called me on Monday. They said, Ed, when are you speaking to the Maxwell Face? I said, on Saturday. I said, good, we'll run it Saturday morning, just for you. Now, there it is. Could not be better. So what's going on? Okay? Yes, sir. Ron.
Yesterday in the Wall Street Journal, it looks like we talked about $1,000 more.
Really? I mean, you know, yeah. Yesterday I was in meetings all day with my my fellow senators, and I didn't get to read it. I brought it down. I got it right here.
Most Americans incurred, low-income Americans incurred average medical costs of $500 to $1,000 more than what the initially.
Right.
I don't know which initial.
Yeah, that's what's bizarre. No, thank you for making that point. The reason for the increases is that the people who are signing up through the exchanges are sicker than they had thought. And there's more chronic diseases, et cetera. So basically, these are actuarially solid numbers. This kind of stuff is wishful thinking, okay? But these guys, and they make that point, very detailed analysis. So what's going on, okay? We got 24 minutes. And in that, I want to give you what I cover in 3 weeks in my course. What's going on regarding costs overall? What does the future hold? And this, Carolyn, comes down to your question, what's it going to be like in 20 years, right? And if you look at costs, the history of costs in the United States, healthcare costs, this is basically starting in 1965. I pre-drew this just in the interest of time. But on this axis is percentage GDP with my good thumb smudge in it. But if you start at 65, it looks something like this. You get a little blip here with the Nixon wage and price controls. You get some other stuff here in the 80s with the DRG. You get this blip. But basically, the line goes from here, basically, a quasi-straight line. We get to 1992, and the Journal of Health Affairs published each January their article called National Health Accounts, where they give you the breakdown of costs 2 years previously. That's the rapidity with which they have the data. And they predicted in 1992 that the healthcare spending level would continue at the current rate. It was then 13.2% of GDP, all the way up to the year 2000 would be would be about 20%, or excuse me, about 17, 18, 20%. Well, lo and behold, that didn't quite happen. Something started to happen in the early 90s where the line inflected. And it basically ended up by the late 90s almost flat. There was virtually no increase in cost until 98. In the private sector, Medicare had the lowest rate of increases in decades, 6 to 8%. And then about 98, something else started to happen. This started to happen. Up and up it went. Then we get here, this period here in the 2008, 9, 10, 11 period where things kind of slowed down quite a bit. And then the question is, what's going to happen from here? Okay? So there are 5 questions that this particular graph raises. What caused this? What caused this? What's going on here? Why this? And then what does the future hold? why this question is this thing here, the alleged contrast between these predictions and what we're reading in the Wall Street Journal, what Ron reported on. Now, so a number of years ago, so this is a critical question. A number of years ago, in trying to answer that question, I sat down and came up with 10 reasons why I thought number one was, that line with number one was the way it was. And this was long before, by the way, David Letterman was a household word. And then I disaggregated one of the 10 into two, so I had 11. And then, Carolyn, I was asked to give a speech at the Harvard Club on Commonwealth Avenue. I gave one on the Harvard side also, but a few years ago, and there was a thing, another 12th that kept appearing as I spoke around the country, and when they finally mentioned the Harvard Club, in honor of the Harvard Club, we have a number 12. There could be others, but I'd like to now dialogue with you. What are they? What's driving healthcare costs? Yes, sir. Pardon? Absolutely. And that's not, by the way, the list is not quantitatively arranged. So, but you absolutely got it. And this is why the reason for the 142 years old. Hang on, Jack. And but this is it. To me, this is the number one. The product has changed, the medical product, and that's why the word inflation is totally inappropriate in healthcare. Do you hear anybody say, "Well, medical inflation is black"? When a barrel of oil, by the way, anyone know in 1972, I read a magnificent book by David Rockefeller called Memoirs a number of years ago. He was head of Citibank at the time. In 72, you know how much a barrel of oil cost? It was before Carter. It was just at the beginning of the embargo. Yeah, $3. You got the right order of magnitude. Unbelievable, $3. Okay, and then it rose to 10 during that embargo period. Okay, 3 times. That's inflation. Same identical barrel of oil. That's inflation. Medicine is not the same product. It's a totally inappropriate term, and the only aspect of the CPI that they do not allow for technical innovation is healthcare. They're assuming that the product's the same. Outrageous. Absolutely outrageous. You find anybody using the word medical inflation, stop them. They're not using the word appropriately, and a lot of flim-flam gets passed or thought because of the inappropriate use of that word. What else? Absolutely. And let me try to find where I sort of got that one. Is that Peter? Yeah, good. Right on. Medical liability. By the way, the good gentleman over, Jack said, Chicago's leading the way. We certainly are in hockey, but in medical liability, again, can I get that? We won the Stanley Cup. Anyway, Peter can't handle it. I got you now, Peter. Oh, I love that. I got you. Okay. Medical liability. And but we are in terrible legislation where we now have counties in Illinois with no obstetricians, no neurosurgeons. You cross the border in Indiana, which is reasonable tort reform. They're all over the place. So a real problem. Something has to be done about this. Medical liability is some of them. Now, what else?
Moral hazard.
Moral hazards. Who said that? Wise guy. Okay. Now we'll come back to that. All right. Absolutely. You keep covering your name. I want to give you Steve. You give him a high grade. He's doing very well. Now, where are you from? DC. Oh, good for you. Now, my condolences also. Number 3, demographics. We are living longer because of medical care to consume more medical care. Living longer because of medical care to consume more medical care. Again, it's not brand for breakfast that's doing this. The United States natural growth of the population and immigration exceeds the death rate by 1% per year. And significantly, the aging of the population. This is for real. This is real. And that's why the pharmaceutical and biotech stocks are doing so well, among many other reasons. The biotechs, because they really are inventing. They are inventing stuff. But, and this is inexorable. This is in the short term. What else? Absolutely. Right on. Have you heard me speak before? That's great. I did this. I spoke at O'Hare a few years ago, and a guy was just knocking him off. And I said, did you hear me speak before? She said, I heard you last Tuesday. So I call that, Carolyn, epidemiologic vagaries. I spent a year at the School of Public Health at Columbia before going to Mount Sinai. And it means changing patterns of diseases. The biggest one being here, AIDS coming on board. Now asthma in inner cities, the obesity epidemic you're talking about, all this, there's a whole zillion of them, okay? And the diseases are increasing. 10% of the population from Nantucket has Lyme disease. There was no Lyme disease when I was in medical school, let alone babsiosis and all this kind of business. I actually have 2 ticks. We have a place in Cape Cod, 2 tick prongs still in my thigh. We get them all the time. Now, what else? What do you mean by that? Insurance. I want to come back to Jack, insurance. Jack, what did you mean by moral hazard?
You have a decoupling of the people who consumes from the people who actually pay. It's sort of like rent control. You have people that receive the service and then third party pays for it. So if that's the case, then you would consume more because you don't have to pay for it.
Yes, yeah. But you're absolutely right about that. Okay. Now, but there are, so one of the things that we have done, reason why I should have put medical liability as number 6, because I wanted to put 4 and 5 together. So what I call that is basically efforts to expand access, okay? And so, and with that comes, as you said, the separation. I mean, it's a violation of the very principles of markets, et cetera, okay? So, and we got really 3 of them: Medicare, Medicaid. I mean, you have essentially the private insurance. Actually, that should go first on the list. The growth from 1929, starting in Dallas, Texas, and then the Obamacare. The idea, again, that it was fascinating. In the Greek crisis, which hopefully was resolved, the Parliament voted late last night to negotiate to a package of reduction of pensions and things like that. But it's a great writing that somebody, the Greeks are very good at spending other people's money. And that's basically what Obamacare boils, or any one of those things, basically boils down to spending people money. But there's another type of moral hazard I thought you were driving about, which I should have put there. What else goes with it? What is one of the problems that compounds expanding access to care? It's a moral hazard issue. What is it? And it might be what you're driving about. I couldn't. Yes.
One thing which may or may not be what you answered here is that the poor people do not go for their clinic checkups and regular care. They just wait till they have to make multiple emergency room visits. And those cost the hospital a lot of money. And these people don't have money to pay. That cost is then
Right. Who can't? Right. Okay.
That's
Yeah.
probably why the Obama can come in, because they wanted everybody to be insured. Okay,
Exactly. That is under this rubric here. What I was getting, Jack, the moral hazard I was talking about was fee for service, okay? And that there is a moral hazard in fee for service brought about what's called information asymmetry. I know more than you need this operation, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, et cetera. So there is a moral hazard issue within fee for service, and that's one of the things that Obamacare and others are trying to move on. And Henry's going to say a little bit about that effort in terms of bundled payments and stuff like that. So what else is on the list? Yes, sir.
Yes, part of both of those, but the elasticity of pricing that people get care, the prices are
Yeah, I mean,
going
it's incorporated. It's really in here. I mean, it's under. You're right about that one, okay? But it's there. I'm trying to think. Just it's in that that component. What else? Aha. So remember, like what?
Well, when there are fewer providers, costs can go up because they're more
Well, if you consolidate if you restrict supply, you're generally speaking, all things being equal, you're going to get higher costs, et cetera. But more than that, remember, why did costs go up the way they were? Well, one of the things was, this is in the moral hazard area, fee for service, was basically institutional capacity. We had hospitals, the program that I was director of at Northwestern for a while, called the program in, we call it health enterprise management, where now, it used to be called program in hospital management. And the whole goal of our graduates was to basically grow to become the director of a 400-bed hospital in over 10 to 15 years. It's an 800-bed hospital, and they give you a gold watch and retire. That's success. Okay? So we had too much in the way of institutional capacity around. And then what else? Yes? Pardon? Well, that goes way back. This is under private insurance. I mean, with all due respect, I don't see much difference between, I'm a member of Blue Cross, between the behavior of Blue Cross wanting their 62% increase in Texas versus the for-profits. That's correct. They've been very successful. Very successful. Yeah, I mean, yeah, and they're right here. Yeah, no question. What else? There's a few others out there. Okay. One of the things over the years was MD specialization. When I was in medical school, nobody went into gastroenterology. In fact, it was the last of, we used to pathophysiology second year, each specialization especially comes in and gives you a few days in the lab. They were the last ones. And it was warm weather. They came in with these cardboard boxes with little ice cream containers. Not ice cream in those containers. And their only technology is this pipe that you look down into the throat. I mean, rigid pipe, wicked. No. And lo and behold, a few years after I'm out of medical school, fiber optics, little local anesthesia, down goes that gastroscope, and gastroscopy goes from number 19 on the Medicare procedure list to number 2 behind cataract extraction. Okay. Now, what does a gastroenterologist see when they look through that gastroscope? What is there down there? There's a dollar sign right there. Write it. You got it, Joe. You've been well trained at Pittsburgh. It's MD specialization. What else is going on?
What about globalization?
What about it?
In terms of, in the old days, if there was an Ebola crisis in West Africa or an earthquake in Haiti, it was dealt with locally. Now we send goods and services and manpower and down to everywhere in the world that needs our help.
Yeah, that's you're right. But that
the world is small.
Yeah, but that's a little. You're right. I mean, that's a driver. But I'd say it's small. I mean, because it's episodic. One is increased knowledge of people demanding more service. This is in deal with the moral hazard thing. Along with it, medical specialization is, I would call, basically suboptimal decision making. But basically, the difference, and I don't mean to be pejorative in this, between the education I received at Harvard in terms of how you make a decision, which was evidence-based. Back then, a guy named Franny Moore was head of surgery at the Brigham. Fantastic individual. You got to Columbia as well. In my experience, we did it this way. Big difference. Okay? So there really weren't guidelines, et cetera, here. And there's I forget a number I know, this is a hugie, which I should have put earlier. But I call this the fallacy of health insurance. And Ron and I would talk a little bit about this. Earlier, by this, insurance is a vehicle to protect individuals against low probability events of which they have no control. Hurricanes, tornadoes, floods. Okay, the probability of death is 100%. We're insuring against a certainty. It's crazy. It violates the very principle of insurance. And we've done a rotten job in dealing with terminal illness, end-of-life care. And by the grace of God, 30 years after I started talking about it, this week, one of the Medicare panels recommended that physicians be reimbursed for advising in end-of-life care. 30 years. They finally figured out that when 20% of all healthcare spending is consumed, 80% by 20% of the population, and 10% of those or whatever are in the last month of life, maybe we should be doing something to do. And by the way, in the pediatric area, that's a problem too. Okay. So that's with the fallacy of health insurance. What's 3? Ron, where does the bulk of your payroll go? Nurses. Okay, what's going on in the market for nurses? Tough these days. Well, what characterizes the market for nurses? What about the market for physical therapists? Okay, what do you mean by going down? Not enough trained. Okay, what about laboratory technologists, radiology technologists? Okay, basically what you have is increased professional shortages. The workforce in medicine becomes, as Peter Drucker would call it, a knowledge workforce. These are much more highly, you're doing genetic testing, you need a different type of individual in your laboratory than you did previously. MRIs require a much more highly trained group of individuals. You don't agree with that?
I don't agree that there is a nursing shortage. I think that there are a lot of nurses around. I think they're not doing
Res ipsa loquitur. May we move on? There's a shortage of nurses doing clinical care. Okay, so, but hold it.
who are then going on to, we are investing resources to give somebody clinical training who is then, who are going into administration.
I agree with you, but even beyond, that is correct. So that is contributing to a shortage of clinical nurses. Just change the language. You're absolutely right. Okay, but the net of it all across all these specialties, that basically hospital budgets are being strained by the need to raise wages. The way you end labor market shortages, you raise wages. Where's the money come from when the government's cutting back? Okay, big problem. Last question. I want to move on. Go ahead. Sure. You got it. You're right on. You're right on. This is the American people increase. They want more services. There's an individualism here. The way the British have tolerated this thing called NICE, the National Institute of Clinical Excellence. What a big brother phrase for screw your neighbor. I mean, it's just terrible. And denying care for different chemotherapeutic agents and all. It only extends life 3 months. Well, maybe those are averages. There's somebody out there who's going to extend it a hell of a lot longer. But you're absolutely right. The American population is not passive. They want this stuff. You're right on it. That's a little bit in this thing here and a combination of my increased knowledge. But you're absolutely correct. Okay? We're different as a nation. It goes all the way back to April 19, 1775. Now, that's the reason why this line went up. Okay? Now, what happened here? What's 2? Absolutely right. Okay? Have you taken courses in this stuff? Yeah, you're just smart. Terrific. Absolutely. So what did they do? This is the managed care revolution, okay? They basically said, you can't go in the hospital anymore. We're going to treat you on an ambulatory basis. You need to get a generic drug, okay? We're going to get you out now 3 days after your surgery, not 7 days that we used to have at Columbia. I remember one day, one of my first operations was closed umbilical hernia. And there's a guy who was an older gentleman. And so on the 5th day, I had to go around and ask him to leave. And he says, geez, just when I'm getting to enjoy it here, I got to go, all right? Right now, you don't stay at all for an umbilical hernia. You're home, okay? I had one of those a few years ago. Now, so what basically happened is that this line, they got the easy stuff out. And I do not mean to guideline development, okay? When do you do the gastroscopy or when don't you, et cetera, et cetera. So basically, what they did is they got the easy stuff out, but there's a line here. You guys have all trained in surgery. This is right lower quadrant pain, red into the umbilicus, low-grade fever, rectal mass. What's that syndrome? Acute appendicitis. What do? What's the principal rule of surgery? Come on, take it. You got it, Peter. When in doubt, take it out. Okay? So basically, there's real medicine going on here. At some point, this line of what we're really doing for taking care of people hits this line, and the line starts to go up again. It comes up to here, and now we're back to the projections that these guys were saying here. Then we get to this point here, 2008, 2009, slowly going steady. Lowest rate of increases in decades. What's going on? Obamacare and companies say, whoa, it's Obamacare. Look how we've saved you all this money. But other people might say what? Exactly right. It was a recession. And colleagues of mine in the strategy department, David Dranoff and a guy named Craig Garthwaite, have looked at this, and they believe 70% of the reduction in rate of increase is due to the recession. And part of that, people having less disposable income, but also firms, because of the recession, wanting to keep jobs, raising the level of high deductible insurance policies, people seeing the high insurance deductible policies, and therefore not getting medical care. And so basically, if you add those two together, 70% is recession related. The stock market rose 211 points yesterday, X percentage points on Thursday, and I did a lot of buying both days and pray that the great thing goes through on Monday and we'll get another 100. Okay, so the recession we're slowly working out of it. So that really raises the question then, what's going to go here? By the way, they also estimated that 30% of the reduction, 70% of the reduction in Medicare rise of increase was due to direct policy-related reductions in payments to providers. And that's what the next 20 years holds. Okay? That's the easiest thing they can do. And that's why the medical profession has to get the word out. Look, American people, we are bringing you cures. And if you want this to happen, which people do at one level, okay, certainly if not 142 years old, why not 100? Then let's get behind this industry and protect it. People will protect the industries that they believe are protecting them. Medicine has failed miserably in the communications area, okay, of giving out the word of what's important. Now, just quickly, what does the future hold? Right? What's going to be the future of this one? Well, that's a problem. I mean, that's a serious problem. But let's put it this way. Is this going to abate as a driving force? Keep going, okay? What about the professional shortages? Depending on how you, is that going to abate? Nope, that's going up. Demographics, is the population suddenly going to get younger? No way. One of the startling figures is in 2013, there were 52.3 million Americans covered by Medicare, okay? What does the figure, what is the projection for the year 2030? Any know? No, no. 60, that's not a bad guess. 81.8 million Americans. Okay, that's a 60% increase in the number of people covered by Medicare in just 17 years. That's incredible. Okay, and it'll be huge. Similarly, medical liability, not much going on. The efforts to expand access to care will only increase. There is some good news that Henry will talk about and what bundled payments, accountable care organizations are doing here. Physician involvement in this, by the way, is hugely important, which he'll talk about. Epidemiologic vagaries are not abating. There'll be all kind of new diseases. This business here, this is what your deal, this is the whole thing about consolidation we're talking about today, okay? An institution being driven. They will be under the gun continuously and will keep amalgamating and amalgamating and amalgamating. This is not going to abate. We will be working on decision making. In the fallacy of health insurance, more and more people will be in terminal states, will be able to do something, but this is going to keep driving costs. The bottom line is all these drivers suggest the line ain't going to look like this, it's going to look like this and this. Okay? And that will put more and more pressure on institutions to consolidate. The way you deal in markets is to be bigger, have more buying power, et cetera. And also, I would say, put more and more pressure on physicians as factors of production. That's what you guys are, factors of production. And what you want to make sure happens is that that factor of production becomes more and more of a factor of leadership in this industry to bring about the best possible future we can have. It's going to be very, very difficult. But the only way we can prevent it from being more difficult is become leaders in it and highly active in it and bring about policies that are conducive to your welfare, but also that of the American people. With that, it's 10:03. Why don't I conclude my comments? We'll move on and we'll have time for questions, unless you want a couple now. Howard? Sure, great. Great, terrific.